Hi, welcome to day 2. The problem is not the problem. This is the subject for today. We're going to talk about perception, how we make sense of the world, how we take all of this sensory data in, we do some stuff with it with our brain, and then we end up feeling a certain way, whether that's on top of the world and capable of everything, or that you want to run away and hide in a corner, and every emotion in between. So the intention of today is to really get you to understand that we're in control of that perception, that if we can influence the way we're thinking about the world, we can directly alter the way we feel about it and how resourceful we feel. And that means we've got the power to change our experience. Sometimes it's useful to use this model to help explain how we make sense of the world. So if we start at the top, perception. So you can see you've got a picture of a head with a brain in it. So we take sensory information in from the world, and then we do some stuff in our head. We generalize, we delete, and we distort the data dependent on our memories, our experiences. This has a direct result on how we feel, our emotional state. And then from there we move into behaviour. And sometimes I like to think of this like the old-fashioned sweet shops, where there were lots of glass jars on the shelf with every different variety of sweets. Toffee bonbons, rhubarb and custards, fudge, chocolate eclairs. Now, when you're feeling brilliant, empowered and resourceful, the sweet shop is fully stocked. You can choose whatever sweet you want, whatever combination of sweets you want. You can walk tall, you can make eye contact, you can bowl into an environment, you can speak effortlessly, you can be witty, you can make people laugh, you can be resourceful. Vice versa, when you're in an unresourceful state, there's only a couple of sweets left on the shelf. And they're not even the sweets that you like. At this point, you end up doing the same behaviours over and over again, and they're still dissatisfactory. They don't get you what you want, and you end up feeling frustrated and fed up with the world. And then unfortunately, this becomes a spiral that feeds back into your perception, proving, see, it never goes the way I want it to, see, that happens, etc. So it's a useful way to hold gently this idea that perception feeds into the way you're feeling, and then from your state, your emotion, that then drives the behaviours available to you. So let's give you an example to help you put into context that image that we've just looked at. Let's say you walk into a room and you find an object, 6'6" high, about 3.5 foot wide. It's white, doesn't smell. Don't feel inclined to taste this object. There's no noise coming from it. It's got a couple of brass rectangles, one here, and there's a round object here. So I'm using my senses to figure out what this object is in front of me. And I'm going to call it a door. Oh, and if I twirl this, it moves. And in fact, it opens. And I can move between this space and that space through the door. As we grow up, we learn to identify objects: doors, chairs, tables, people, cars, animals, etc. And then we like to give them a function. So a door has a function of keeping you warm inside, allowing you to split rooms and areas in parts. So when I think about this door, I don't have any immediate heightened emotional response to it. My state is fairly neutral. But if recently I have accidentally cut my finger, ended up in A&E for 3 or 4 hours, had to have stitches, the bruising took ages, I might have a very different emotional state to neutral about doors. And this can in fact then impact on my behaviours. As I open the door, I might get remembered pain from the experience. I might try and squeeze myself in, really not wanting to hurt myself as I go back through the door. In contrast, if I was looking to buy a new lounge door, not really sure what I want yet, I'm looking for ideas, looking for inspiration, my emotional state at this point is going to be curiosity, exploration, research. I'm going to be open to ideas and possibility. Is this the door? Let me have a look. Does it let lots of light in? Do I like the handle mechanism? Did I want a knob or did I want a handle? I'm going to explore and I'm going to be more resourceful because of that curiosity. So let's come back to the door on its own. We've used our sensory data to take in the information about this object and categorise it. Door. And then, depending on your experiences, your current situation, you add in a set of data that creates your own perception. So if I've recently hurt my hand, I may well be more cautious around doors and a little bit more timid. And if I'm looking for a new door, I might be much more curious. So these two different states are what I've created internally in my brain as a result of the experiences and the memories I've got. And they have nothing to do with the door in the real world. So if we come back now to the model that we looked at in the beginning, you can see that the perception of the door altered depending on your previous experience, and that then directly impacted on the state, how you were feeling, and as a result of the state, the behaviours you chose or that were accessible changed from being worried about getting hurt again walking through the door, or being genuinely curious about if you've just found the door of your dreams. What we're going to do now is take a look at how we can change this cycle. So we're going to have a look at perception first. I'm sure you've all got examples of a friend and perhaps over time they let you down, or there was a big conflict between you, and so you changed your perception of this person. So the bottom line is perception can change, it's flexible, it's dynamic, it's based on a set of experiences, and these are held as a construct, a set of rules of how you believe people should behave, how you should treat each other, and they help you make sense of the world. But it's important to remember that they're in your head. The only person that's enforcing those rules is you. So, for example, if you have an expectation, a construct, a set of rules in your head that says when somebody enters the room, they should say hello, always. And then there's somebody in your life who doesn't do this. Every time they come into a room and don't say hello, you're going to experience some feedback about the rule that you have. It's going to create upset or anger or sadness or frustration with them that they're not acting the way they should do. But in actuality, it's your rule system, your expectation that is causing the conflict within your system. They have a whole different rule book, and for them, for whatever reason, it's not necessary for them to say hello every time they walk into a room. So it's useful at times to challenge your perception, and the way to do this is with questions. So here's some example of some thoughts that we might be having. I don't know what I want. I can't do it. It's too hard. I haven't got enough time. I might not get the job. He might not listen. All of these types of thoughts direct you straight, headfirst, into the problem. So you can only see your legs sticking out at the end. If we don't challenge these thoughts, then it can spiral rapidly into a whole set of thoughts about why you don't know what you want, why you can't do it, why it's too hard, why you haven't got enough time, why you might not get the job, and why he might not want to listen. So instead, we need to use the fact that our brain loves to problem solve, and we need to ask a question when we hear this type of thought, which will push ourselves into a resourceful way of thinking instead. One of my favourite questions I use to challenge myself is, when is that not true? This type of question feels like it flips the inside of our brain upside down to look for a different way of resolving the problem. In front of you, against I don't know what I want, you can see the questions that would allow you to explore that thought further. So if you did know, what would it look like and feel like? What would be the same? What wouldn't be the same? What would be different from now? What would you have more of or less of? Take a moment to just read through the questions that you can use to challenge your story. I'm not going to say too much about state in this session, apart from your state is temporary. That biochemical release from your brain and into your bloodstream is constantly changing, and your thinking allows it to persist or alter. Using different behaviours can positively impact on your state. So we're going to talk now about behaviours. So the behaviours that we choose can impact on our perception and state, as you can see. Deciding to use a breathing exercise every time you start to feel anxious from here on in, or every time you feel overwhelmed to do a grounding technique, will positively impact on your resourcefulness and your ability to stay rational and logical and find a different way out of the problem, to spiral up and into your power rather than down and into carnage. Behaviours that increase your oxygen levels and your heart rate will positively impact your perception because they will give you a different way of thinking about things. Yoga and mindful movement meditation, breathing exercises, and grounding will all be valuable tools to help you change your state and therefore change your perception. So that brings us to the end of day 2. And I hope that you have a sense of the power that you could have in terms of making your experience different. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Anxiety is raw and relentless and challenging when it's at its worst, and unforgiving. So me saying that you have the power might feel like me asking you to go into a gym and lift 100 kilo bench weight when you've never done that before, or to run a 5-minute kilometre. And at the start, all of these might seem completely improbable, but yet we've done greater things. All of these started with people taking one step in that direction, and that's all it ever takes. Little steps in the direction you want to travel. The desire to be more mindful and keep more awareness of where your thoughts are going. So to conclude, ask yourself questions that take you to a resourceful place, and own your behaviours. Use them to manage your state. See you tomorrow.